Hi, my name is Father Charlie Bouchard, and I'm speaking to you from here in St. Louis, Missouri, to offer you a word of hope on the scriptures for Wednesday, July 10th. Jesus, as you know, often said to his disciples, especially at the end of one of the Gospels, to go out to all the world and preach the good news. And from very early days, Christian missionaries tried to do that. They wanted to go out and preach the gospel everywhere they could around the globe, and they did. But in today's gospel, Jesus says something unusual. He tells his disciples not to go to the Samaritans or the Gentiles, but to preach only to the lost sheep of Israel. In other words, he's kind of saying to them, you can preach the gospel in Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri, but not in New York, New Jersey, or California. And commentators have wondered about this for a long time. Why did Jesus say something like that, appearing to limit the mission of the apostles to a certain number of people or to a certain number of places? Some say that it's because Jesus knew that the disciples weren't really equipped to speak to those outsiders who were perhaps not Hebrew speaking, who were not the same culture, and that they would not be familiar enough with the Gentiles and with others to be able to preach effectively. Still others say that Jesus realized that in order for this preaching to be successful, they had to choose carefully and start out small, that they had to work with a small group that they were more familiar with, preach to them first, and then very gradually expand. Or still others have suggested that perhaps Jesus just knew that the Jews had a very privileged place in the history of salvation, and he wanted to honor that by telling his disciples to preach to them first. But I think there might be another explanation here. One night I was driving back to St. Louis, and it was very late at night, and I was kind of bored, so I was listening to an evangelical, or really a fundamentalist radio station. And the preacher was berating his listeners because they had gotten lazy and kind of fallen away from their faith. They were backsliding, as he said, and as Christian preachers sometimes say, or they were in a backslidden condition, which I thought was kind of humorous at the time. But I think that's a challenge for us today, too. And it might have been why Jesus sent his disciples first to the lost sheep of Israel, because surely the Jews of his day, just like Christians and Catholics today, had at many times been guilty of backsliding, that they had gotten lazy or indifferent to the message of the law or the prophets or even of Jesus himself, and had kind of drifted away from the faith. Each one of us can think of somebody like that, somebody who has kind of lost interest in the church or really didn't fully understand what the church meant to begin with. And I invite you today to think of one of those people, or to have it in the back of your mind as you talk to friends. And if you notice that somebody has really drifted away from the church or lost interest, ask them why. Try to find out what would make them re-engage, how they could hear the gospel with new ears and see the world of Jesus with new eyes. And perhaps in that way, we can preach first to the lost sheep of our church, and then to those who have never heard the gospel or who have never been part of the church.